Chapter 1847, Immortal Footsteps Mystic Realm, 2, but at least it felt more normal than the Mystic Realm with the cursed true god in it. Does this mean that we're still in the Mystic Realm? We've only switched from the creepy Mystic Realm to this Mystic Realm that we were originally supposed to enter. Jiang Xiaobai touched his chin as he said. Mu Feiruo and Bai Lishi nodded in agreement. Yi Qingtang thought about it too. They previously entered the cursed Mystic Realm because of the deity ocean, but since the deity ocean sent them out, they must have returned to the original place they were originally meant to be in. However, no one knew what the Immortal Footsteps Mystic Realm would be like. Though the Immortal Footsteps Mystic Realm is mysterious and different every single time, it seems safer this time. Let's just be careful and walk around to see if we can spot anything. There shouldn't be much of a problem, Mu Feiruo said. The differences in the attitudes between the comparisons were clearly different this time. They weren't cooperative with each other the previous time, but after experiencing such an ordeal and receiving help from Yi Qingtang, they wouldn't hide anything about the Immortal Footsteps Mystic Realm from her anymore. Mu Feiruo's suggestion was accepted by the rest and they moved around, exploring the Immortal Footsteps Mystic Realm. Mu Feiruo. Jiang Xiaobai suddenly looked at Mu Feiruo as he walked. Mu Feiruo looked at him perplexedly. A smile appeared on Jiang Xiaobai's face, revealing his pearly white teeth. I have a friend who likes you very much. He says that you're his only goddess. With absolutely no shame at all, Jiang Xiaobai enunciated the word goddess clearly. Mu Feiruo's face instantly darkened. He quickened his footsteps, pretending he hadn't heard anything. How did the Jiang family even raise such a mean person? Ugh! Facepalm. Yi Qingtang could sense that the forces in her body were slightly different from the previous time. When Yi Qingtang entered the cursed mystic realm, she was only at the early stage of the fourth heaven of the heavenly venerate realm, later advancing to the mid-stage. But just then, she felt. The forces in her body had advanced to the early stage of heavenly venerate fifth heaven. What was going on? Looking at the others, Yi Qingtang decided to test the waters. But they replied that nothing had changed for them. They were in the exact state as when they first came. Yi Qingtang was perplexed. But somehow, she figured out something. According to Jiang Xiaobai and the others' descriptions of the cursed mystic realm, they fell into a hole just right after entering the mystic realm. They soon lost consciousness and ran into Yi Qingtang. As for Yi Qingtang, she made use of every single second in the mystic realm to cultivate. Though the mystic realm was filled with dangers and her spirit energy depleted rapidly, the effects of her cultivation were impressive. Moreover, the mystic realm was filled with spirit energy. Yi Qingtang had experienced countless battles and built her skills along the way. Since they had been unconscious, they naturally wouldn't be able to compare with her. Was this considered a blessing in disguise? Yi Qingtang heaved a sigh of relief. At least she hadn't wasted time and energy. Look, there's light there. After walking for some time, Jiang Xiaobai suddenly lifted his hand, pointing up ahead. Everyone looked over. There was a brightly lit area not too far away. Chapter 1848, Immortal Footsteps Mystic Realm, 3, they rushed towards the area with lights. It was late at night and a town appeared before them. There weren't any walls and a series of lights were hung upon the enormous trees, lighting up the entire place. They could hear the sound of crowds before they even entered the area. The town was bustling with activity, with many gathering around the tree. They didn't dare get closer. All they did was to find a huge tree, hiding behind it as they observed the scene. They were stunned when they saw the figures. What is that? Catfish. Jiang Xiaobai's eyes widened in shock as he saw their round bodies. There wasn't a single human-like figure in the town. All they saw were round bodies with big mouths, seemingly catfish, with 2 whiskers. These beings had big stomachs, walking around with their short legs. Is that a catfish demon? I have never seen this species before. Jiang Xiaobai was filled with confusion. The central mainland had many unique races, but he hadn't seen such a species before. Yi Qingtang's gaze riveted on Little White Tiger. Little White Tiger instantly shook its head. Although it had a broad range of knowledge, there were countless unique races all over the world. It couldn't possibly recognize each and every one. Well, at least Little White Tiger was certain that this being couldn't be found in the central mainland, not to say the first domain. They were really curious about what species it was. Suddenly, a huge bump appeared on the ground and the next moment, a weird creature resembling a catfish suddenly popped out of it. When it stood up, it shook the soil on its body away. They were all shocked. They didn't feel any unfamiliar aura at all. Their bodies tensed in preparation for action, but the fat catfish didn't even bother with them. It just walked towards the crowded town. It didn't seem to have any intentions of attacking them at all. They looked at it and took a step forward. Please hold on. Mu Feirua called out the fat catfish. The fat catfish stopped. It didn't even have a neck and could only wobble over. The moment it turned around, it looked at Mu Feirua with black, beady eyes. May I know, where is this? Yi Qingtang asked. The fat catfish sized them up, realizing that they weren't the same kind of being. It remained calm, not showing any aggressive intentions at all. You're new here. They nodded. You want to know the rules here? The fat catfish rubbed its palms together and touched its rotund chin. Sorry to trouble you, Yi Qingtang said politely. This fat catfish was far more polite compared to the creatures in the cursed mystic realm. Except for the fact that it was kind of ugly. The fat catfish opened up its mouth, showing a mouthful of sharp teeth as it said, "Let's have a bet. If you win, I'll tell you everything." What? They were caught at a loss. A bet? What was going on? This catfish even knew how to bet. Chapter 1849, Bet 1, Are you up for it? If not, I'm going to leave. Don't waste my time. The fat catfish shook its whiskers impatiently. Yi Qingtang's face stiffened for a moment, then she asked, How do you want to bet? The fat catfish suddenly opened its mouth and its stomach churned. Puff! Without further ado, it spat out 2 dice cups from the insides of its stomach. I shall not make things difficult for you since you're new. Let's just bet with dice, the fat catfish said as it patted its stomach. As Yi Qingtang looked at the dice cup, she saw that it was completely coated with the fat catfish's saliva. Turning around, she looked at Jiang Xiaobai and the others with a complicated expression on her face. Anyone know how to do it? Yi Qingtang asked. Bailey Shi and Mu Feirua instantly shook their heads. They had invested all their time and energy into cultivation. Moreover, they were gifted and one of the best among their peers. The elders would never have taught them how to gamble. Although they had seen other people in the clan doing it, they had never participated. Bailey Shi and Mu Feirua were prodigies in terms of cultivation, but in terms of goofing around, they definitely had no skills in this kind of play at all. Seeing the two shake their heads, Yi Qingtang's eyes riveted on Jiang Xiaobai. He was the wildest and most playful out of the few. In response, Jiang Xiaobai only blinked innocently at her. Sister. Qing, I'm still young. No matter how playful he was, at his age, he would never have the chance to gamble under the supervision of the Jiang family's elders. Damn it. None of them knew how to gamble. Bunch of useless things. Yi Qingtang sighed, looking at the fat catfish with difficulty written all over her face. Bailey, she, and the others also had complicated expressions. They had never anticipated such a ridiculous demand to appear in this mystic realm. Everyone was now stuck in the mystic realm and was completely clueless about the rules. With their previous experience in the cursed mystic realm, it would be best if they could learn about the rules as soon as possible. Coughs. How about I give it a go? Enchanting sounded unconfident. The fat catfish had seen everything and its eyes lit up. Have you come to a decision yet? Are you up for it? Enchanting exchanged glances with the others and looked at the fat catfish, showing some hesitation before she finally nodded. "I'll try." The fat catfish touched its whiskers as it said, "Great, you can give it a go. However, since we're making a bet here, what's your stake?" The fat catfish was delighted to have run into some newcomers. Everyone knew that newcomers were just like fat sheep ready to be butchered. Thank the heavens for its good luck today. One look and it could tell that they had no experience at all. Stake. What would be considered a stake? Money. When Mufaroa heard her, he instantly took some tails out of the space ring. The fat catfish didn't bother to even look at the tails, dismissing him with a wave of its fins. Who cares about money? Forget it, since you don't know the rules here, it'll be nice and remind you. Tails aren't worth anything here. If you want to make a bet, you can use Dharma artifacts or weapons, things of that sort. The fat catfish's beady eyes landed on Enchanting's wrist as it spoke. Chapter 1850, Bet 2. I'll take into account that you're new here and I won't make things difficult for you. I'll just take your bangle as a stake. Once the fat catfish said that, everyone's gazes riveted on Enchanting's wrist. Before everyone could look closer, she quickly put her hand down, covering her wrist with her long sleeves. Little White Tiger was also stunned. It lifted its head, looking at Enchanting's hand. From Little White Tiger's angle, Enchanting's wrist was empty. What bangle? That fat catfish had bad eyesight. Hold on. Little White Tiger was suddenly reminded of something. Enchanting had a bangle on her wrist. It was the 9 Souls ring from the Holy Lord of Shadows. Enchanting somehow ended up wearing it, but it had become invisible ever since she put on the 9 Souls ring. No one could see it. If the fat catfish hadn't mentioned it, Little White Tiger would have completely forgotten about it. So how could this fat catfish see the 9 Souls ring? Little White Tiger was surprised and confused at the same time. Enchanting also felt the same way as Little White Tiger. When the fat catfish mentioned the bangle, she subconsciously hid her wrist. If not, when Bailey, she, and the others saw that there wasn't anything on her wrist, it would only invite trouble for her. However, how could the fat catfish see the 9 Souls ring? She recalled that as the fat catfish spoke, its eyes traveled over her wrist inconspicuously. She hadn't thought about the 9 Souls ring at all, but now that the fat catfish mentioned it, she realized that this fellow must have spotted the 9 Souls ring and came in her direction deliberately. If not, why would he have so much patience to waste time with some newcomers? Bailey, she, and the others hadn't seen the bangle around her wrist. But noticing that she treasured it so much, it must be something important to her. How about I use this as a stake? Bailey, she felt indebted to Enchanting, and since none of them knew how to gamble, their chances of winning were very low. He took a Dharma artifact out of his space ring and brought it in front of the fat catfish. The Dharma artifact had a gold aura and was of a high grade. The corners of the fat catfish's mouth twitched, contempt written all over its face. I'm not interested in that. All I want is her bangle. If you're not going to bet with it, I'll leave right away. Bailey's face darkened. He offered one of the best Dharma artifacts from the Bailey family and it could easily be used as a stake. However, this fat catfish didn't even spare it a glance. His Dharma artifact couldn't compare with Yi Qingtang's bangle. Actually, the fat catfish had laid its eyes on the 9 souls ring from the very start. No matter what Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo offered, it wouldn't budge. They couldn't help but feel that this fat catfish was making things difficult for them on purpose. Whatever. Even if we don't make a bet, we can figure it out by ourselves. I don't believe that we can't do it. Mu Feiruo's face darkened and seemed to be getting more frustrated. Wait, I'll do it, Yi Qingtang suddenly spoke up. Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo were stunned. Miss Yi, you don't need to force yourself into it, this fellow is obviously experienced. If you make a bet with it, our chances are close to 0, Bailey Shi said. It is taking advantage of us, it's trying to cheat you of your bangle. Jiang Xiaobai also spoke up. Who cares for that bangle? I'm only doing this because I think that you're pitiful, the fat catfish said. It's okay, I'll bet with you. If you win, I'll give you the bangle, and if you lose, you have to tell us the rules. It seemed that Yi Qingtang had already made up her mind. Chapter 1851, Bet 3. Bailey Shi and the others felt bad when Yi Qingtang made the decision. On the other hand, the fat catfish was delighted. Okay, hurry up then. The fat catfish stuck its big and long tongue out right away and it touched the ground. Taking one dice cup up with its tongue, it shook it around with apparent ease. Let's see who has the bigger number. I'm warning you up front, don't even think of trying to use your powers to cheat. My senses are far more sensitive than any of you here. The fat catfish's words made Bailey Shi and the others' hearts sink. Though they didn't know how to gamble, their hearing was extraordinary and they could hear the numbers of the dice. They had originally planned to change the numbers with their powers after Yi Qingtang was done shaking the dice cup, but now... The fat catfish was indeed experienced. Soon, the fat catfish's flexible tongue was done shaking and he slammed the dice cup on the ground. Bailey Shi and the others' faces instantly darkened. They could hear that. There were 2 5s and 1 6 in the dice cup. It's your turn. The fat catfish placed the dice cup on the ground and signaled to Yi Qingtang. When Yi Qingtang saw the dice cup that was covered in the fat catfish's saliva, she hesitated before finally taking it. Moving quickly, she shook the cup vigorously, to the point that no one could see clearly. Everyone was surprised when they saw Yi Qingtang's moves. Miss Yi knows how to gamble. When the fat catfish saw her moves, its whiskers unconsciously quivered. She's an amateur. No matter how fanciful her moves are, what matters is the number in the dice cup. What's the point in all these useless moves? The fat catfish's words made them pause. They just realized that the way Yi Qingtang shook the dice cup was identical to the fat catfish. She seemed to be imitating the fat catfish. However, she wouldn't be able to replicate the fat catfish's score. The tiny sliver of hope they just had instantly vanished. Bang! Yi Qingtang slammed the dice cup on the ground. Bailey Shi and the others' hearts sank once they heard it. It was 2 2s and 1 3. It was true. What was the point? The outcome was obvious. Even the fat catfish could hear it. The corners of its mouth quirked up into a smile as it opened the cup. It was 2 5s and 1 6 inside. Mu Feiruo took a deep breath, looking at Yi Qingtang in concern. 2 5s and 1 6. You're formidable. Yi Qingtang counted and opened her mouth in shock. Ha, it's your turn. You have to admit to your loss. If not, I have my ways of dealing with you, the fat catfish threatened. I said that I'll try. I didn't say that this round is counted. Yi Qingtang sounded guilty as she spoke. The fat catfish was even more pleased when he noticed her guilty tone. Who said that you can try? This is it, open it up now. But Enchanting was hesitant. The fat catfish started getting impatient. Open it up now. If you win, I'll tell you the rules immediately. Enchanting didn't appear confident at all. She looked at the fat catfish, before looking at the others and finally uncovering the dice. The fat catfish couldn't hide its grin. It couldn't wait for the bangle to become its possession. Chapter 1852, One More Round. 1. When Enchanting opened the dice cup, the fat catfish was dumbfounded. Its mouth fell open in shock and its whiskers quivered. There were 2 6s and 1 5 in her dice cup. It was 1 point bigger than the fat catfish's number. The fat catfish's face turned charcoal black. Oh. Seems like I have a bigger number. I was really worried for a moment. Enchanting looked at the dice cup and patted her chest in relief. Everyone was shocked. What was going on? They heard Enchanting's dice cup just now. It was small numbers. How could it become like this? The fat catfish's whiskers curled up in anger. It glared at Enchanting furiously. It didn't anticipate Enchanting's number to be bigger than its number. Also, it observed Enchanting carefully just now. It hadn't noticed Enchanting use any powers. How could the number change? Bailey, she and the others were also confused. But no matter what, Enchanting had won. They heaved a sigh of relief. Can you tell us the rules now? Enchanting smiled as she asked. Though the fat catfish was still confused, it kept its promise and told them the rules. This mystic realm is just like a huge casino. The fat catfishes here did not go by clans. They merely live in this mystic realm and gambled all day. In fact, there was nothing gambling couldn't solve in this mystic realm. If there was, then they could always gamble as well. The fat catfishes didn't need to pay for meals and water, they only needed to gamble for it. What do you bet? Mu Pharaoh asked out of curiosity. The fat catfish scanned them, spitting out a diamond-shaped gemstone. The gemstone was entirely orange and it glistened as the light hit it, even more eye-catching than any diamond. We use these spirit stones as stakes. Since you're human and don't have spirit stones, you can use your Dharma artifacts instead. The fat catfish was still indignant about losing. The fat catfishes here loved gambling, they had to gamble no matter what, and that was the only thing they did every day. Hence, they were used to admitting their losses. If anyone dared to back out, no one would gamble with them anymore. To the fat catfish, it would die from not being able to gambling. What? The little white tiger's head hurt as it listened. This was its first time meeting such a strange being. Enchanting was observant and found out that the spirit stone that the fat catfish just spat out had strong spirit energy. It felt just like the spirit energy was compressed inside the spirit stone. Could the spirit energy inside the spirit stones be used for their cultivation? They spent some time understanding the rules and prepared to walk towards where the fat catfishes were gathered. From the description of this fat catfish, they already found out that none of them were interested in attacking outsiders. As long as no one provoked the fat catfish, they wouldn't be bothered and are extremely welcoming of outsiders to join them in gambling. When the fat catfish noticed that they wanted to leave, it still felt indignant about losing and said, "Hold on. You want to back out?" Jiang Xiaobai looked at the fat catfish. The fat catfish cleared its throat. "I want to have another round with you." Its words were meant for Enchanting. Chapter 1853, One More Round. 2. Air. I don't think so. I already know what I needed to know. Enchanting shook her head. The fat catfish wasn't willing to just give up like that. I only told you about the rules just now. Don't you want to know about the dangers? It was clear that the fat catfish was taking advantage of the fact that they were new and were completely clueless about the place. Damn it, why didn't you say it just now? You hid it from us on purpose. Jiang Xiaobai rolled his sleeves up, preparing to punch the fat catfish. The fat catfish replied, "You only mentioned the rules and I told you all of that. The dangers aren't part of the stakes. If we just have one more round, I'll tell you everything." Yi Qingtang hesitated. "It's fine, well, be extra careful. It was pure luck just now. This bangle is very important to me." Yi Qingtang even pretended to touch her wrist carefully. The fat catfish also knew that Yi Qingtang won because of luck just now. But it was exactly for this reason it felt even more indignant. Moreover, it really wanted Yi Qingtang's bangle. The fat catfish took out the spirit stone it spat out just now. "How about this, we'll have another round. If you win, I'll not only tell you the dangers of this place, I'll also give you this spirit stone. You're new here and definitely haven't seen this. I've met some humans before, this spirit stone will be extremely useful for cultivation. It's precious and rare for us too." Once Yi Qingtang heard that the spirit stones could help in cultivation, her eyes lit up. She had already suspected that the spirit energy inside the spirit stones could be absorbed. Now the fat catfish just confirmed her suspicions. But even so, Yi Qingtang still frowned. "We have 4 people here, how can one spirit stone be enough?" The corners of the fat catfish's mouth twitched. This lass really thought that she would be able to win because of pure luck again. The fat catfish wasn't convinced that Yi Qingtang had such good luck. With its gambling skills, it wouldn't be a problem winning. "Okay, I'll give you 4, 5. Yi Qingtang suddenly spoke, pointing at the little white tiger. "Include it too." The fat catfish's face turned dark, but it quickly got a grip over itself. Since she was this greedy, the fat catfish was determined to make her lose it all. "Miss Yi, please don't be rash. We've already learned the important stuff, there's no need for you to gamble with it again," Mu Feiruo advised. He could tell that this fat catfish was pretty skillful. Yi Qingtang had won just now, but she wouldn't be that lucky this time. There's only one chance left. I'm asking for another round only because I haven't had enough yet. I'll be frank with you. It's impossible for you to get the spirit stones unless you make a bet with other catfishes. However, they may not necessarily be interested in your stakes. Without the spirit stones, there's no way you can avoid danger. The fat catfish pretended to be offering them serious advice. "Stop trying to scare us into it." Bailey, she frowned. "Why would I?" Yi Qingtang appeared hesitant, but she finally spoke up. "Let's have one more round." Chapter 1854, One More Round, 3. The fat catfish was extremely excited to hear her decision. Neither Bailey Shi nor the others couldn't stop Yi Qingtang from going for it. Picking up the dice cup on the ground with one hand, Yi Qingtang let her other hand glide past her long hair. The fat catfish was deadly serious and its beady eyes gleamed. It also picked up the dice cup and shook it around vigorously. The loud sounds of dice shaking around made it difficult for Bailey Shi and the rest to decipher anything. Bam! The fat catfish slammed the dice cup on the floor and revealed a smirk. It knew that Bailey Shi and the rest could hear the numbers, so this time, it prevented them from hearing it. The fat catfish then looked towards Yi Qingtang. "It's your turn." Yi Qingtang looked at the dice cup in her hand before she looked at the fat catfish. Suddenly, Yi Qingtang shook the cup vigorously, to the point where her hands might just fly and detach from her body. She slammed the dice cup on the ground. It seemed like she was imitating the fat catfish once again. She shook really quickly, even the fat catfish couldn't decipher the numbers. But even if the fat catfish couldn't decipher from hearing it, it didn't have anything to worry about. It was confident about its number this time. It would be nearly impossible for Enchanting to win. Open it. The fat catfish opened the dice cup. There were 2 6s and 1 5 inside. The fat catfish started laughing. Bailey, she and the others lost all hope. This was Enchanting's previous score. It was almost a perfect number. Unless Enchanting was able to get 3 6s, she would definitely lose. But 3 6s. Without using their powers, how could these amateurs even achieve that? Enchanting was taken aback once she saw the fat catfish's number. The fat catfish was extremely pleased with itself. It lifted its head arrogantly as it looked at Enchanting. It's your turn. At that moment, Bailey, she and the others' gazes also landed on Enchanting. With pursed lips, Enchanting slowly opened the dice cup. When the first dice appeared, Bailey, she and the others gasped, closing their eyes in despair. It was a 1. Ah, lass, admit defeat now. Give me your bangle. Once the fat catfish saw the dice with 1 point, it was delighted. Enchanting definitely had no hopes. She had lost. Enchanting's hand froze in midair. Once the fat catfish saw her reaction, it walked over and grabbed Enchanting's hand. Stop struggling. You only have 1 point now, you've lost for sure. Hand me the bangle now, I've still got to. The fat catfish pulled Enchanting's hand and the remaining dice appeared. Before Enchanting even understood what happened, the fat catfish was dumbfounded. 3 1s. How is this even possible? The fat catfish staggered backward. Enchanting was not happy with her score, looking at the dice in disgruntlement. I've lost, I only have 3 points. But the fat catfish's eyes were able to pop out. When Bailey, she and the others heard Enchanting's score, they opened their eyes and were elated once they saw the dice. Miss Yi, you didn't lose. You won. This is 3 leopards. Mu Pharaoh exclaimed. Although he didn't know how to gamble, had witnessed others in the act before. He knew that with 3 exact dice scores, it was considered the biggest number possible. Chapter 1855, Trap, 1, Really? I won. Enchanting acted surprised, as if she didn't know the rules at all. The fat catfish's face turned a pitch black, like the underside of a burnt pot. How could this be? Originally the fat catfish thought that it had run into a bunch of vulnerable fat sheep, yet he hadn't anticipated them to have such good luck. The fat catfish felt really shitty inside. In contrast, Bailey, she and the others were elated. They hadn't expected Enchanting to have such good luck. She even managed to strike it big. Enchanting felt somewhat bad as she said, I'm sorry, I'm unfamiliar with this. It's my first time playing. Does that mean I've won? Once Enchanting said that, the fat catfish almost spat out blood. It was her first time. So was it because she had very good luck or that he had very bad luck? The fat catfish felt like dying, but it could only hold in its emotions and nod. Yes, you've won. Enchanting smiled at him. Then our stakes. The fat catfish's chest hurt, but it could only bear with the pain and hand the 5 spirit stones over to Enchanting. Right before it placed the spirit stones down on her palm, it lifted its head and asked, Is this really your first time? Enchanting nodded. I swear, this is my first time playing it this lifetime. The fat catfish felt a twinge in its chest. It unwillingly placed the spirit stones down and prepared to leave with a broken heart. Hold on, other than the spirit stones, aren't you also supposed to tell us about the dangers here? Enchanting hadn't forgotten about the other conditions of the bet. The fat catfish paused, turning back to look at Enchanting. It's very dangerous here during the day. If you want to stay alive, find a place and hide in the daytime. It's very dangerous. Enchanting was startled. The fat catfish continued speaking, yes. Those who head outside in the daytime would die for no known reason. That's why we only come out at night. The fat catfishes only went outside at night. It wasn't a personal preference, but rather a habit they had to get accustomed to. It was because scary monsters would appear in the daytime and several fat catfish had died for no known reason. None of them could survive. What kind of monster is it? Enchanting asked. The fat catfish shook its head. I don't know. All I know is that it's really scary. No one would come back alive when they head out in the daytime. We can't even find their bodies. Remember I told you that the spirit stones are very useful. I wasn't lying. There aren't many places to hide, and even if you climb a tree and stay up there, you can't avoid the monster's attack. We usually build our own holes underground. As for y'all, the only way out would be to gather enough spirit stones and go to the Crystal Palace for their protection. Crystal Palace. Enchanting and the others were confused. The fat catfish lifted its stubby hand, pointing towards the brightly lit gambling town. At the very end of it was a colorful palace. That's Fuchsio's territory. Up till this point, the fat catfish couldn't help but raise the corners of its mouth in disdain. In order to hide from the dangers in the daytime, the fat catfishes would build underground holes in the daytime and only come out at night. Chapter 1856, Trap 2. Fuchsio was part of the fat catfish clan. However, Fuchsio had an eccentric personality and completely different hobbies from the other fat catfishes. All fat catfishes in this mystic realm would solve all problems with gambling, but Fuchsio is an exception. Not only did it build the only crystal palace on the ground surface to hide from the monsters, but it was also the only fat catfish to depend on trade instead of gambling. As long as you gather enough spirit stones, you can exchange them for a day's protection at Fuchsio's place. It's still early now, you have time. The fat catfish said its piece and left. Enchanting and the others were shocked by the fat catfish's words. This seemingly safe mystic realm had such dangers. Is the fat catfish trustworthy? Mu Ferua asked cautiously. It should be fine. Though the fat catfish is greedy, it stood by its word. Enchanting had figured out that the fat catfishes were only obsessed with gambling, but they were quite accountable. It said that we need to gather enough spirit stones before we can go to the Crystal Palace to seek protection. Does this mean that we should also do to the gambling town and try our luck? Mu Ferua asked. Enchanting nodded. She then distributed the spirit stones she won from the fat catfish among them. They froze for a moment before they held their hands up, rejecting her. You won these spirit stones, how can we take them? The spirit stones could be exchanged for protection, but Enchanting was generous and gave it to them. They were extremely touched by this move. They had already received too much from her, how could they take the spirit stones? The fat catfishes here seem to be interested in these spirit stones. Since we're going to be spending some time here, you will need it to win more spirit stones. Just take it. At most, you can return it to me when you win more spirit stones in the future. Enchanting smiled as she said. Bailey Shi and Mu Ferua didn't seem like bad people. Since they had all come into an unfamiliar environment, they should help each other out. It definitely beat having to fight battles. Despite her words, Bailey Shi and Mu Ferua were still hesitant. They exchanged glances before they finally spoke. Miss Yi, thank you for your kind intentions. However, we're not familiar with gambling and we're afraid that we will lose these spirit stones if we're not careful enough. We're not as lucky as Miss Yi, so what if I tell you that you can have such good luck too? The corners of Yi Qingtang's lips raised into a cunning smile. What? Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo were shocked. Yi Qingtang didn't say much. She stretched her hand out to show them. It was dark, but Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo could see a thin strand of hair around Yi Qingtang's finger. The hair was extremely thin, and if one didn't observe carefully, it was barely noticeable in the dark. Miss Yi, you, Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo were perplexed. Yi Qingtang let out a sigh. These two were too honest. They probably focused all their attention on cultivation and didn't think of anything else other than it, let alone scheming tactics of gambling. Right at that moment, Yi Qingtang picked up a piece of stone that was about the size of a dice and wrapped the strand of hair around it. Chapter 1857, Trap 3. When Yi Qingtang pulled the strand of hair, the dices started moving too. At that moment, they finally figured everything out. You used a strand of hair to change the score. Bailey's eyes widened in shock. Yi Qingtang nodded. Yes, so, you can go ahead and just try it out with these spirit stones. Their expressions turned complicated. When did Yi Qingtang come up with this idea? How could they not have realized anything? At that moment, they finally realized that the fat catfish suffered a miserable loss and it didn't even know it had been duped. Yi Qingtang had clearly been playing dumb. The fat catfish had fixated its attention on whether they used spirit energy. No one knew that Yi Qingtang turned the tide using a strand of hair. No wonder she agreed to the bet with the fat catfish. She was already prepared. Miss Yi is indeed intelligent. Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo were genuinely impressed with Yi Qingtang for coming up with such an ingenious idea in such a short period of time. She certainly wasn't the newcomer she appeared to be. She was very experienced. Yi Qingtang smiled without saying anything. Technically, she hadn't lied to the fat catfish earlier on. It was true that she hadn't gambled before of this lifetime. But that didn't mean that she hadn't done it in her previous lifetime. She had lived 300 years in her previous life and was constantly forced to flee for her life, hiding in different places throughout the years. She had witnessed much more than young masters like Mu Feiruo, who only focused on cultivation. With Yi Qingtang's trick, Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo finally took the spirit stones from Yi Qingtang. They thought to themselves that they would return the winnings to Yi Qingtang later. As for Jiang Xiaobai, he looked at Yi Qingtang with a wide smile on his face. He was the only one who wasn't worried about her at all. Sister Qing is indeed formidable. Yi Qingtang raised her brows as she looked at Jiang Xiaobai's hand that was about to approach her. She instantly hid it away. With Yi Qingtang's pointers, Bailey Shi and the rest finally had some confidence and they walked towards the gambling town together. Groups of fat catfishes gathered in the gambling town. They all had similar appearances, the only difference was in the color and print of their bodies. Some of the fat catfishes had larger physiques, with big and round stomachs, but others were of a smaller physique. Yi Qingtang had previously noticed that the fat catfish they encountered took everything out from its stomach, so they must have an enormous storage space in their stomachs. They acted separately, wanting to win big. Only Little White Tiger followed Yi Qingtang. It was odd how the fat catfishes weren't particularly interested in their arrival, only throwing over a couple of glances before they focused on the bets again. Recalling the previous fat catfish's words, there seemed to be quite a number of humans visiting this mystic realm, so they probably weren't surprised by the arrival of humans at all. Yi Qingtang looked around the various groups of fat catfishes before she finally spotted the fattest fat catfish in the room. The fat catfish stood beside a huge tree, with other fat catfishes surrounding it. They were all intensely invested in some strange bets. Chapter 1858, Hoodwinked. 1. The fat catfish's physiques were dependent on the amount of things they kept in their stomach. This naturally led to Enchanting picking the fattest catfish since she was determined to gather enough spirit stones to seek protection at the Crystal Palace. Enchanting instantly took Little White Tiger and the 2 spirit stones with her, squeezing through the crowd of rotund bodies to reach the fattest catfish. The group of fat catfishes wasn't bothered by them, they were too absorbed in the bet. The fattest catfish seemed to have won this round. It grabbed a bunch of spirit stones, shoving them into its stomach. Let's have a bet. Enchanting smiled at the fat catfish. The fat catfish froze for a moment, sizing Enchanting up with its beady eyes. Sure. Fat catfishes had never and would never reject gambling invitations. Lass, what are the stakes? The fat catfish narrowed its eyes, looking at Enchanting as though she was a fat sheep ready to be butchered. Enough spirit stones to enter the Crystal Palace. Enchanting had no idea how many spirit stones it would take to enter the Crystal Palace, so she just said that. Once Enchanting said that, the fat catfish was taken aback. Fine, but what are your stakes? Enchanting took out the 2 precious spirit stones. The fat catfish was at a loss for words. Are you kidding? The fat catfish stared at her with widened eyes, feeling ridiculed. The Crystal Palace costs at least 500 spirit stones a day. You're thinking of only using 2 spirit stones to make a bet with me. Are you taking me for a fool? Enchanting was dumbfounded. 500 spirit stones. The other fat catfishes turned their attention to them once they overheard the conversation, looking at Enchanting as though she was an ignorant fool. 2 spirit stones, who would even make a bet with such low stakes? No one would make a bet with stakes below 20 spirit stones. It's not even enough for me to have a meal. The group of fat catfishes was grumbling at the scant spirit stone. The corners of Enchanting's mouth twitched as she looked at the 2 precious spirit stones in her palm, realizing that she had been cheated by that crafty fat catfish. It was fucking precious. According to these fat catfishes, it would take at least 10 spirit stones to get a meal here. The 5 spirit stones that the crafty fat catfish lost to her wasn't even enough for a meal. She was wary of everything, but let her guard down around that fat catfish. Though Enchanting was devastated inside, she still remained calm and collected on the outside. An idea suddenly popped up in her mind. You're mistaken, I'm not using these 2 spirit stones, Enchanting said. The fat catfish looked at her with confusion. What are you using then? Enchanting pulled her sleeve up, revealing her slim wrist. Her eyes were fixed on the fat catfish's face. The fat catfish's eyes instantly lit up when it saw Enchanting's wrist. You're using this bangle. There was excitement in its voice. Enchanting could confirm that the fat catfishes could see the 9 souls ring on her wrist. Yes, that's right. Enchanting nodded. Deal. The fat catfish instantly agreed with a completely different attitude from before. I'll bet 500 spirit stones. This time, the fat catfish was nearly desperate as it announced. Chapter 1859, Hoodwinked. 2. Astuteness flashed past Enchanting's eyes. The owner of the 9 souls ring was the Holy Lord of Shadows. Enchanting wasn't certain of the value of it and how attractive it would be to the fat catfish, but seeing their reactions, it was obvious that the worth of the 9 souls ring was way more than a mere 500 spirit stones. She knew exactly what to do. With a hesitant expression, she replied, 500 spirit stones. Let me think about it. Once the fat catfish noticed Enchanting's hesitation, it panicked. If that's too little, I'll add 100 more spirit stones. 100. Enchanting's attitude was ambiguous. The fat catfishes surrounding them were also tempted to make an offer. Nothing was set in stone yet, they could still intercept. Lass, I'll offer 700 spirit stones. A fat catfish wasn't shy to make an intercepting offer. 700. I'll do 800. Once a fat catfish made the first move, the others started making offers, and in no time, the bet went up to 1,200 spirit stones. The rapid increase in stakes was a pleasant surprise for Enchanting. To think that the bangle of the Holy Lord of Shadows was this attractive to the fat catfishes. Why? When the first fat catfish that Enchanting had originally approached saw the other fat catfishes vying for the bet, its face darkened to a charcoal black. 2,000. I'll bet with you, it shouted. The other fat catfishes were slightly hesitant hearing the number of spirit stones. Not because they felt the bangle wasn't worth it, but because they didn't have that many spirit stones with them. Disappointment was written all over their faces. Alright, how do we go about it? Enchanting was pretty satisfied with the offer. With inconspicuous movements, she was ready to get a strand of hair on standby. But who knew? Let's bet on whether the number of petals of the first flower that falls from the tree is an odd or even number, the fat catfish said as it patted the tree behind it. The tree was enormous and seemed to reach the skies. Pink flowers grew beautifully on the tree, with heavy layers of petals. Enchanting, they could do it this way too. Enchanting surveyed their surroundings, noticing that other than dice, there were many strange items placed on the tables around. Enchanting hadn't noticed the purpose of those items, but now she did. These items were all for the fat catfishes to make their bets. They could bet on literally anything and everything. At that moment, Enchanting wasn't flustered at all. With her rich experiences in her previous lifetime, she was confident in dealing with such a scenario. However, I have a feeling, Enchanting suddenly spoke with a low volume. Little White Tiger lifted its head, feeling confused. Bailey Shi and Mu Feroa might come back crying. The fat catfish was impatient, rushing Enchanting into making a decision. Thinking about the situation she would have to face later, she wasted no time and pushed on decisively. Chapter 1860, Hoodwinked, 3, in the Gambling Town. Bailey Shi and Mu Feroa circled around for quite some time, but soon enough, they were both filled with despair and ran into each other. Originally, the pair were considerably well-dressed, wearing some exquisite accessories, but now, their outfit was completely plain. They had lost almost everything. Their eyes met and they both revealed an awkward smile. They quickly spotted Enchanting. Enchanting was sitting on a stump, caressing Little White Tiger's fur. The moment they saw Enchanting, a cloud passed over their faces. Miss Yi. Mu Feroa's face was red as he looked at Enchanting with embarrassment, feeling dejected. Bailey Shi also did the same. You lost everything. Enchanting sized them up. Just a glance and she could tell what had happened. Things were awkward for Mu Feroa and Bailey Shi as they stood there with lowered heads, without their usual confidence. They had won tens of spirit stones using Enchanting's method at the start. But they were completely clueless about the fat catfish's multitude of ways to gamble. They had only learned from Enchanting how to control the dice, but when faced with other situations, they had no idea what to do at all and naturally lost everything. Having lost all their spirit stones, how could they not feel embarrassed? They didn't want to ask Enchanting for more, hence they started betting with the Dharma treasures in their space ring. But who knew that they would lose almost everything? They didn't even win once out of the many bets. If this went on, it wouldn't take too long before they lose everything they owned, with not even a piece of clothing left for themselves. They were both prodigies with superior martial talents, but for anything other than that. Enchanting seemed to already have predicted this outcome. She shook her head as she looked at them both, saying, "Shall I lend you more?" She then reached out for the spirit stones she just won. But Bailey, Shi and Mu Feiruo instantly shook their heads, rejecting her suggestion. They had a clear idea of their gambling skills. With their current levels, even if Enchanting gave them all of the spirit stones she had on hand, it wouldn't be enough for them, they would just lose it all. Thankfully, they took another approach. "Miss Yi, can we exchange for spirit stones using our Dharma treasures?" Mu Feiruo looked at the big sack beside Enchanting. It seemed she had a big harvest. "I don't think we should do that. Since we're all in this together, I can just give the spirit stones to you if you need it." Enchanting was very generous. But the more generous she was, the more guilty Bailey, Shi and Mu Feiruo felt. They had already imposed on Enchanting on many occasions, they even owed their lives to Enchanting. How could they continue troubling her? Miss Yi was benevolent, but they couldn't possibly be that shameless. "No worries, Miss Yi. We've already made the decision. Well, feel bad if we take your spirit stones without exchanging for something," Bailey, she said earnestly. Enchanting had won the spirit stones based on her own efforts. How could they take them away from her without anything in return? Afraid that Enchanting would reject them again, Bailey, Shi and Mu Feiruo quickly took out a few Dharma artifacts from the space ring. They were the geniuses of the two powerful ancient clans. They naturally had the best Dharma artifacts from the two ancient clans. Chapter 1861, The Crystal Palace. 1. Bailey, Shi and Mu Feiruo already knew that the spirit stones the fat catfish had were nowhere near as precious as it had said. The fat catfishes here had various methods of gambling. Even if they had learned how to tamper with the dice, they knew nothing about the other games, which meant they were losing 9 times out of 10. They would rather exchange their Dharma treasures with Enchanting than lose them to the fat catfishes. Amusement flashed across Enchanting's face as she saw them take out their Dharma treasures. These two were pretty honest. The Dharma treasures from the Bailey family and the Mu family were pretty good. "Since the two of you are so adamant, I won't refuse then." Enchanting took out 1,000 spirit stones from her cloth bag and gave them 500 each. To the two who had lost almost everything by then, this amount of spirit stones was more than they had ever seen. The two of them were so grateful to see Enchanting giving them the spirit stones so generously that they almost knelt to kowtow to her. Seeing Enchanting play the two honest people, the little white tiger shook its head silently. Having seen how much Enchanting had won from the fat catfish, the little white tiger knew that 1,000 spirit stones were nothing to her. The little white tiger had not seen the fat catfish win even a single time against Enchanting. Enchanting had used her 9 souls ring as a wager every single time and had won every time. And these two also thought that they had met a living Buddha. They had handed over their family's treasures so willingly and even thanked her. You've all won enough." At this moment, Jiang Xiaobai, who had not shown his face all this time, came over. His eye swept over the spirit stones in Bailey, Shi and Mu Feiruo hands and then landed on Enchanting's bulging pockets. "Elder Sister Qing is amazing. You won so much," Jiang Xiaobai said as he smiled. He threw a cloth bag down and sat down beside her. "Elder Sister Qing, I didn't win much, just 800 stones. I'll keep 600 and give 200 to you as payment. After all, I wouldn't have won this much if not for your spirit stones." With that, Jiang Xiaobai stuffed part of his winnings into Enchanting's hands. Bailey, Shi and Mu Feiruo had thought that Jiang Xiaobai would be empty-handed like them but looked embarrassed when they saw his winnings. They couldn't even compare to this small kid. They felt even worse when they saw how much Jiang Xiaobai was giving Enchanting. They had all forgotten that Enchanting had given them the spirit stone they had used to start betting. Feeling like they owed Enchanting, they stuffed 2 more Dharma treasures into her hands before she could say anything. They weren't idiots. The payment wasn't just to thank her. Given their horrible gambling skills, they would likely need her help again in the future. The 500 spirit stones were only enough for 1 day here. And who knew how long they would need to stay? They naturally had to cling to Enchanting. Enchanting praised Jiang Xiaobai silently as she received more Dharma treasures without doing anything. This little rascal was going to have a bright future. Chapter 1862, The Crystal Palace, 2. Most of them had already earned enough spirit stones to last them through a day, and Enchanting had already figured out how to win. But looking at how Bailey Shi and Mu Feirua were doing, she felt she had to bring them to the Crystal Palace to collect themselves first. Furthermore, they had just escaped from the cursed mystic realm and hadn't had much time to rest yet. It was better to reconvene for now. With that, Enchanting led them all towards the Crystal Palace. Bailey Shi and the others willingly allowed themselves to be led by Enchanting. The Crystal Palace was beautiful. Under the light, it sparkled and shimmered, reflecting the light that hit it. But on closer inspection, even though the palace was made from something similar to crystal, they couldn't see into the palace at all. The palace was hemispherical like a huge pot lid stuck on the ground. And while it was called a palace, it looked too rough and crude to be one. But it was already heaven compared to the stumps all around them. Walking over to the entrance of the Crystal Palace, Enchanting raised her hand and knocked. Silence. The Crystal Palace was quiet, but Enchanting waited patiently outside. After a long while, the door slowly opened. As the door opened, a round stomach poked out from the inside. What a huge belly! Jiang Xiaobai blinked and looked at the huge, rounded belly in front of him. The Crystal Palace was at least 2 meters high, but all they could see was a huge belly. They couldn't even see a head. Who goes there? A low voice rumbled from within the Crystal Palace as plumes of smoke floated out from the palace. It smelled extremely potent, and with its sensitive sense of smell, Little White Tiger immediately started coughing. Are you Fuqiu? Enchanting asked calmly. Would it be all right if we stayed a night in your Crystal Palace? You want to stay here? Fuqiu's voice was impatient. How many of you are there? 4. Enchanting naturally excluded Little White Tiger. 5,000 spirit stones. Fuqiu threw out a number. All of them froze as they heard the amount. 5,000. But they said we would only need 500 each. The Fuqiu rubbed his belly impatiently from within the Crystal Palace, his face still hidden from them. I set the price however I want. Get lost if you don't have enough spirit stones. With that, Fuqiu lifted his hands to shut the door. It was the first time any of them were meeting a fat catfish with such a foul temper. It had neither shown them its face nor taken a good look at them before chasing them away. Enchanting hadn't expected the fat catfish's temper to be this bad. Not only that, the price was a far cry from what they had expected. The extra thousands were nothing to Enchanting since she could just gamble for it, but she wanted to let Mu Feirua and the rest go in and rest first. Who knew what the fat catfishes would do to these people who only knew how to cultivate themselves? Wait. Well, stay. Enchanting quickly said. Miss Yi. Mu Feirua and Bailey, she exclaimed. Fuqiu paused as it heard this. Without lowering its head, it reached out with its fat claws. Give me the spirit stones as payment first. Chapter 1863, The Crystal Palace, 3. Quickly pooling all of their spirit stones together, it added up to about 3,000. It's not enough, Fuqiu said immediately. Enchanting spoke. Could you treat this 3,000 as a deposit and let my 2 friends go in first? I'll go and gather the rest of the spirit stones. Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo froze as Enchanting said this. They had already been prepared to give up. After all, they didn't have that many spirit stones, so there was nothing they could do if Enchanting decided to leave them outside. They had not expected Enchanting to let them go in first. Just as they wanted to retort, Enchanting shot them a steady look. Fu Qiu was taken aback by Enchanting's words. You want them to come in first? You should know that the sun is about to rise. If you don't have enough spirit stones, you're going to have to spend the day outside, and no one is going to save you if you die. That's not something you need to worry about. I have a plan, Enchanting said. She looked at the situation Jiang Xiaobai and she was in. With their ability, winning 2,000 spirit stones before the sun rose shouldn't be a problem. As for Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo, they should remain obediently in the Crystal Palace for now. Fu Qiu fell silent for a moment after Enchanting spoke and finally bent down from within the Crystal Palace, revealing his head. He wanted to see what this selfless girl looked like. It was only at this moment that Enchanting and the others saw what Fu Qiu really looked like. Fu Qiu's body was huge, much larger than the other fat catfishes they had seen. It looked like a huge giant when it popped its head out. There was a small cigarette in Fu Qiu's mouth. It was approximately the size of a human but looked extremely tiny in its eyes. Surprise flashed through its black beady eyes as it looked at Enchanting. Jiuer. Fu Qiu suddenly murmured. Everyone else looked surprised as well. But he quickly recovered and his gaze swept over Enchanting's body. It still looked a little confused but the confusion vanished quickly from his eyes. It looked at the people beside Enchanting and said, I'll let 2 people enter for 3,000. Enchanting was thinking the same thing and pointed at Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo. The two were unwilling at first but Enchanting told them straight up that they didn't have enough spirit stones. As such, it would be better for them to remain there for now so as not to be a burden to her and Jiang Xiaobai. Understanding that their skills would be useless here, Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo could only agree reluctantly with awkward looks on their faces. Now they felt even more indebted to Enchanting. They had never imagined that the little girl from the Jiang family, whom they had never even seen in the martial arts championship, would be their savior. Fu Qiu didn't say much about Enchanting's decision and only continued puffing on its cigarette. Its gaze on Enchanting became more and more complicated. After persuading Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo to go into the Crystal Palace, Enchanting ran around gathering spirit stones with Little White Tiger and Jiang Xiaobai. Chapter 1864, Fu Qiu, 1. Although Jiang Xiaobai didn't know how to gamble, his mind was much more flexible than Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo. After one lesson from Enchanting, he quickly got the hang of things and they were completely in sync. By the time the first light of day broke, they had already gathered enough spirit stones and headed back into the Crystal Palace. Everything in the Crystal Palace was crystal clear. Enchanting found that even though they couldn't see into the Crystal Palace when they were outside, they could see the outside clearly from the inside. Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo had been waiting at the entrance all this time and only breathed a sigh of relief once they saw Enchanting and Jiang Xiaobai enter safely. Just for one day. If you don't have enough stones tomorrow, you'll all have to get lost, Fu Qiu said in a greedy voice as he puffed on his cigarette. His gaze kept deviating unconsciously to Enchanting, his thoughts mysterious. Fu Qiu kept its word after receiving the spirit stones. It brought them underground of the Crystal Palace where there were many small rooms which looked like caves. They each had their own room. Jiang Xiaobai took this opportunity to slip into Enchanting's room, where he ignored Enchanting rolling her eyes at him and refused to leave. Elder Sister Qing, please don't be mad. I know my mistake now. Aren't I here now to share the information I've gathered? Jiang Xiaobai said with a smile. What information? Enchanting asked Jiang Xiaobai with her arms crossed. I managed to gather some information on Fu Qiu when I was gambling with the fat catfishes just now, Jiang Xiaobai said. Enchanting lifted her eyebrows slightly. She was relieved that he was smart enough not to trust the words of the first catfish she met. I heard that they were originally nameless and lived underground. Fu Qiu is the only one in their clan with a name, and I even heard that it was given to it by a human. Jiang Xiaobai told her all the information he had gathered. In the beginning, Fu Qiu had been like the other fat catfishes, nameless and living underground. But over 10 years ago, a group of humans had entered this mystic realm by chance. At that time, there were no places to offer them sanctuary. It was rumored that while 10 people entered, there were only 2 to 3 left in the end. But there was a wise person among those who had survived. That person found Fu Qiu and somehow, they became closer. Not only did the person give it its name, but they also pushed Fu Qiu to build the Crystal Palace. It was from then on that Fu Qiu's Crystal Palace became the only place that humans could seek shelter in this mystic realm. In exchange for reparation, Fu Qiu would allow them to stay. Fu Qiu had become the odd one out the moment it had gotten its name, and the other fat catfishes wanted nothing to do with it. But Fu Qiu had managed to earn a fortune by offering shelter to the humans and had become one of the richest among the clan. Enchanting was surprised to hear all this. She had met many fat catfishes along the way and knew how stubborn they could be. Fu Qiu was the worst out of all of them, and she couldn't imagine it being set straight by any human. Chapter 1865, Fu Qiu, 2. So it was thanks to that person's intelligence that the Crystal Palace was built and existed until now. Luckily, Enchanting and the others weren't forced to experience danger from the very first day they arrived in this mystic realm. Enchanting spoke to Jiang Xiaobai. Jiang Xiaobai was already feeling a little sleepy. He wanted to stay over, but Enchanting chased him out without any hesitation. On the other hand, Enchanting wasn't sleepy at all. They had arrived for one day, but she hadn't felt any danger yet. But since the fat catfishes were all extremely afraid of the day, she couldn't help but feel curious. Even little white tiger was already asleep, but Enchanting was still wide awake. She went up the stairs, standing on top of the Crystal Palace. From her vantage point, she could see the gradually rising sun. The fat catfishes quickly gathered and went underground after having a whole night's worth of fun. No one stayed behind. The bustling activity from last night burst like a bubble. What are you doing? A deep voice came from behind Enchanting. Enchanting turned around, seeing Fu Qiu right behind her. You're not to come up during the day. Stay underground if you don't want to invite trouble for yourself. Fu Qiu sounded displeased. What kind of scary monster appears in the day? Enchanting asked. Keep your curiosity to yourself, if not, you can get out. Fu Qiu was completely cold and unfeeling, as though she was an overly curious burden. Since she was seeking shelter in its abode, Enchanting naturally didn't want to come into a conflict with Fu Qiu. She merely bowed respectfully before taking her leave. Right when Enchanting bowed, the jade pendant she wore around her neck fell out from her collar. The moment the jade pendant slid out, Fu Qiu froze on the spot, as though it had been struck by lightning. Only after Enchanting left did Fu Qiu slowly collect itself. It turned around, taking big steps as it walked into the Crystal Palace. Fu Qiu finally arrived at a massive chamber. Inside, an abundant number of Dharma artifacts and treasures were displayed. These treasures had all been exchanged from the humans who came into the mystic realm. But somehow, the treasures that humans would fight so hard for was akin to trash here. Fu Qiu didn't even spare a glance at them and walked past it, coming to a corner of the chamber. Hanging on the wall was an old portrait that was in a poor condition. The portrait seemed to have been hung there for a very long time. Its colors had faded, but it was of a charming young girl. A delicate jade pendant hung right in front of the young girl's chest. If Enchanting were to be there, she could see that the jade pendant the young girl wore was exactly the same as the one Enchanting had. Fu Qiu looked at the young girl in the portrait. All the astuteness and greed in his eyes dissipated and his eyes were filled with reminiscence. Jiu'er, Fu Qiu's voice was miserable. It knew that Jiu'er would never be able to come back here. But now it had actually met a young girl that resembled Jiu'er. The girl even wore the same jade pendant that Jiu'er used to wear. Who is she? Jiu'er, did you send her here to look for me? Chapter 1866, Fu Qiu, 3. Fu Qiu was still pondering over it when it suddenly felt some violent shaking from the ground. It turned around, walking towards the front. Through the walls of the Crystal Palace, it could witness everything that was happening outside clearly. A black figure with a dominating presence was outside and there were endless groaning sounds. Fu Qiu just bit on its opium pipe and watched quietly, just like it did countless times in the past. At that moment, Enchanting was underground resting on the bed. She was still pondering over everything that had happened in the mystic realm when suddenly, the violent shaking was felt even underground, almost throwing her off the bed. Little White Tiger also woke up. What the heck, what's wrong with this mystic realm? Enchanting had no idea either, but it seemed like Fu Qiu didn't want them to know about what would happen during the day here. Why was it such a secret? With the violent shaking, Enchanting couldn't fall asleep at all. She sat up, taking out the remaining spirit stones she had. She heard from the fat catfishes that these spirit stones could be used for cultivation, and so she couldn't help but want to try it out. So she sat cross-legged, placing the spirit stone in her palm and started cultivating. Soon, she realized that during her cultivation, the spirit energy in the spirit stones was slowly absorbed into her body. What was even more fascinating was the energy in the spirit stones was very pure. It only took a while before Enchanting felt a significant increase in the power within her body. She instantly felt energized. Initially, she had thought that it was a wasted trip to this mystic realm, but she hadn't expected to have discovered that the spirit stones could be used in cultivation. Calming her mind, Enchanting ended up using all the spirit stones in her cultivation. The spirit energy within the spirit stones was slowly absorbed by Enchanting's body, and at the same time, it lost its glowing luster. Now, the used spirit stones were dim and just like frosted glass. Time passed, and by the time Enchanting absorbed all the spirit energy from the spirit stones, the violent shaking had stopped. After a bit, someone knocked on her room door. Fu Qiu stood outside. When Enchanting saw Fu Qiu, she had a look of surprise on her face, but it quickly disappeared. "It's dark now," Fu Qiu said with a cold expression on its face. "You'll only need to pay 2,000 spirit stones tonight. If you can't pay, get out now." Just as it said this, Bailey Shi and Mu Feirua walked out of their rooms and overheard Fu Qiu's words. They were shocked. They knew for a fact that they had to pay enough spirit stones in exchange for their stay at the Crystal Palace. But when did this fat catfish become this understanding? Just yesterday, it had demanded 5,000 spirit stones, but now it was only 2,000 spirit stones. Did it suddenly become benevolent? Impossible. Everyone was confused by its act. Nevertheless, anyone who doesn't take advantage of these terms would definitely be a fool. Enchanting's demand for spirit stones had naturally increased after learning that the spirit stones could be used in cultivation. "Okay." Enchanting replied with a polite smile and gathered everyone to head to the gambling town for more spirit stones. It was pitch dark outside the Crystal Palace. Now that the sun had set, the fat catfishes all came out of the underground holes, gathering around the stump with their large stomachs. Where do you think these fat catfishes get their spirit stones from? Do you think they dig underground for the spirit stones? I noticed that they don't seem to lack spirit stones even after using so many every day. Jiang Xiaobai scanned around, noticing that the fat catfishes seemed to be bigger today compared to yesterday. Chapter 1867, Guest from the Second Domain, 1. It's quite possible that they dug the spirit stones from underground. Yi Qingtang looked around their surroundings, quickly deciding on a few fat catfishes with larger builds. She gave Jiang Xiaobai some instructions and the two immediately started making their moves. Jiang Xiaobai was sharp-witted and could quickly pick it up with ease. With Yi Qingtang's guidance, they didn't have to spend much time and effort to win big at the gambling town. Yi Qingtang even took Jiang Xiaobai with her and they disguised themselves in order to not be recognized by the fat catfishes. But soon, Yi Qingtang realized that there wasn't even a need for her to do so. These fat catfishes had odd personalities. It seemed that they really had no other hobbies other than gambling. Even if they lost in a bet, they wouldn't be that affected and would be energetic again in just a matter of time. She had witnessed a few fat catfishes having extremely bad luck, losing almost every bet, but they could still continue betting without feeling dejected at all. As for Yi Qingtang and Jiang Xiaobai, they weren't that obsessive over betting. Fu Qiu hadn't demanded as many spirit stones this time, but after experiencing the benefit of using spirit stones in cultivation, Yi Qingtang wouldn't stop at just winning enough spirit stones for their stay at the Crystal Palace. She took Jiang Xiaobai with her, going around to win more than 6,000 spirit stones before she finally stopped. With their disguised appearances, they prepared to head back to the Crystal Palace when they spotted two figures right outside the Crystal Palace. It was a young girl with an exquisite appearance standing in front of a tall, middle-aged man. They were debating over something with Fu Qiu. When Yi Qingtang walked over, she saw the young girl's face flushing red from her anger. Isn't it 500 spirit stones a day? Why did you suddenly raise the price? The young girl's cheeks puffed up. 1,000 a day. If you can't pay, you can leave, Fu Qiu said irritably. Yi Qingtang hadn't expected to meet another human here, but she wasn't interested in staying curious. She walked into the Crystal Palace with Jiang Xiaobai, taking out a few bunches of spirit stones and handing them to Fu Qiu. Fu Qiu counted the spirit stones, making sure it was enough before it let the two people in. However, when it saw Yi Qingtang's beautiful face become an extremely ugly one, it was stunned. What happened? It only took one night and this last became so ugly. Fu Qiu was still shocked and the girl noticed that Yi Qingtang had a pocket full of spirit stones. Her eyes instantly lit up. Hold on. The girl called out. Yes. Is there anything I can help you with? Now that Yi Qingtang looked at the girl nearby, she noticed that the girl's facial features were incredibly good-looking and exuded a noble aura. However, she could sense that the girl was demanding and wasn't a fan of such people. You have many spirit stones. The girl's eyes landed on Yi Qingtang's pocket. Yi Qingtang raised her brows slightly. I'll exchange with you. Before Yi Qingtang could even answer, the girl signaled at the tall man beside her. The man stepped forward, taking out a huge amount of taels from the space ring. When she saw the taels, Yi Qingtang almost laughed out loud. Using taels in a mystic realm. Was she even normal? Chapter 1868, Guest from the Second Domain, 2. Apologies, I'm not interested. Yi Qingtang shook her head as she declined politely. The girl hadn't expected Yi Qingtang to reject her so quickly. Seeing that the sky was slowly turning brighter, she couldn't help but feel worried. Hold on, it's fine if you don't want to take the money. What about Dharma artifacts or elixirs? It'll give you anything you want in exchange for the spirit stones. Just name it. The girl was talking big. Enchanting was amused by the girl's crude ways. If they weren't in the mystic realm, Enchanting would definitely agree to exchange the spirit stones for the Dharma artifacts and elixirs. However, after learning that the spirit stones could be used in cultivation, such material possession no longer interested her anymore. Nothing mattered more than making herself more powerful. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in the things you're offering. You. The girl's face stiffened, stomping her feet angrily as she shouted, I don't care, you must exchange them with me. Enchanting shook her head as she watched the girl throw a tantrum. Not wanting to bother with the girl any longer, she took Jiang Xiaobai and Little White Tiger with her into the Crystal Palace. The tall man frowned as he looked at the skies. He stepped forward, putting away the money and taking out 2 bottles of elixirs from the space ring. Young Miss is young and insensible. Everything happened suddenly and we don't have enough time to prepare the spirit stones needed. We know that it's very dangerous here in the day and I was wondering if you could show mercy and exchange some spirit stones with us. These 2 bottles of miracle pills are a token of appreciation for you. I will make sure to return the entire sum of spirit stones after tonight. The man's voice was deep but his words were extremely pleasant to the ears. Enchanting wasn't intending to be nosy but when she heard the words miracle pills, she froze. Miracle pills. Wasn't that a supreme grade elixir that only existed in the second domain? When Enchanting looked at the 2 of them carefully again, she noticed that the man had an oppressive aura, though it was quite subtle. She was stunned. This man's skills, he was at the paragon level. Hearing how the man addressed the girl, he obviously held the position of a bodyguard. A holy venerate who could easily take out 2 bottles of miracle pills, how could he be a mere bodyguard? Although Enchanting was surprised by their identities, she tried her best to not show it. She had only heard of the miracle pills, which is a supreme grade elixir in the second domain in her previous life. Such an elixir would allow one to achieve remarkable progress in cultivation in a short amount of period. Moreover, the elixir would boost one's performance, no matter the cultivation type. The miracle pills was said to be a portable sacred item for cultivation. Even powerful clans in the second domain wouldn't be able to easily land their hands on it. Where exactly did these 2 people come from? Though Enchanting had planned to keep the spirit stones for her cultivation, if she could land her hands on the miracle pills and have it act as a complement to the spirit stones, it would increase the effects of her cultivation efforts. It was tempting. You'll return me the spirit stones tomorrow. Enchanting pretended to be calm as she asked. The man nodded. Fine, how many do you need? Who cared about that girl's nasty temper? This holy venerate was way more pleasant and his offers were far more attractive to Enchanting. Chapter 1869, Guest from the Second Domain, 3, 1,000, the man answered. Enchanting handed 1,000 spirit stones over to the man at once. Even if he didn't return the spirit stones, it was already an amazing deal to get 2 bottles of miracle pills for 1,000 spirit stones. The man secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he took the spirit stones from Enchanting, while the girl's face was thunderous. She glared at Enchanting with lustrous eyes, looking like she wanted to strangle Enchanting to death. Long Yi, how could you just give the miracle pills to her so easily like that? The girl was extremely displeased. Young miss, we have to compromise since we need help. We came here to look for Miss Jiao and we've even lost contact with young master. Your safety is our top priority now, Long Yi said. The girl was initially very displeased, but when she heard Miss Jiao, she calmed down in an instant. Is Aunt Jiao really here? The girl sounded excited as she asked. Long Yi couldn't exactly confirm it yet, but that was already the closest news. Miss Jo disappeared after entering the mystic realm. Even if she's not here now, there must be some clues in this mystic realm. The girl pursed her lips, her arrogance disappearing, only to be replaced with a complicated mix of worry and hope. Fu Qiu only let them in after receiving the full sum of spirit stones. When the girl walked past Enchanting and saw her ugly appearance, she frowned. Humph, ugly freak. I won't bother with you. She wouldn't have had to put up with this if she hadn't lost contact with her elder brother. Ugly freaky Enchanting, she really had the urge to spank this lass. Jiang Xiaobai didn't say a word throughout the entire time, he merely looked at her with narrowed eyes. After a while, he finally lifted his head. Sister, listen. Enchanting was puzzled. There's a crow making sounds, it's really noisy, Jiang Xiaobai said with an innocent expression. The only person to talk was the girl and her face instantly darkened. You're saying that I'm a crow? Did I say that it was you? Or are you just having a guilty conscience? Jiang Xiaobai said with an innocent smile. The girl almost fainted from anger hearing that. Long Yi. The girl had never experienced such humiliation before. Right when she was about to flare up. Shut up. The sun is rising soon. If you don't want to die, scram the hell underground now, Fu Qiu ordered. The girl wasn't going to budge, but Long Yi held her back. Enchanting, Jiang Xiaobai, and Little White Tiger went back to their respective rooms. Even after Enchanting and the others had left, the girl was still fuming in anger. Long Yi could only advise, young miss, we sought permission from master to come and search for Miss Jo this time. Please don't be rash and just put up with it for now. Our first priority is finding Miss Jo. With the mention of Miss Jo, the girl's anger instantly dissipated and she bit down on her lips. Bunch of old fools, how could Aunt Jo possibly betray us? It's been so many years and they never once looked for Aunt Jo properly instead of arguing all the time. Aunt Jo might have suffered a lot outside and yet they accused her like that. If I was Aunt Jo, I also wouldn't go back if I learned that those old fools are accusing me. At her words, Long Yi could only sigh helplessly with a complicated expression on his face. Chapter 1870, Unexpected Discovery. 1. Long Yi, promise me that when we find Aunt Jo, you must protect her. We shouldn't force her to come back, understood? The girl's expression became stern as she looked at Long Yi. Understood. After returning to the room, Enchanting took one dosage of the miracle pills. It had a bitter taste and the bitterness spread all the way to her throat. Almost immediately after, Enchanting's entire body was abnormally hot, as though she was soaking in a tub full of boiling water. It only took a while before she was completed covered in sweat. Enchanting could clearly feel her every pore being forced open from this surging energy. There was no time to waste. Taking the spirit stones, she started to cultivate. The effects of the miracle pills instantly showed. The energy in the spirit stones was instantly absorbed by Enchanting's body and rushed madly. It was a significant improvement that left Enchanting feeling surprised. The 1,000 spirit stones weren't wasted after all. As Enchanting didn't want to waste any time at all, she quickly calmed herself and continued to cultivate. It only took one night for Enchanting to use up more than half of the few thousand spirit stones they had won earlier. By the time she was done cultivating, her entire body was soaking wet, as though she had just come out from a tub of water. What surprised her even more was that as she perspired, she could see some dark grayish dirt coming out together. This miracle pills is capable of detoxification too. Enchanting was pleasantly surprised. She could feel the energy within her body increasing rapidly, with the speed being faster by almost 3 times. Once the heavenly Venerate realm reached the last few heavens, it would experience changes in its attributes, and likewise, the difficulty of cultivations would multiply and significantly increase. With the aid of the miracle pills and the pure spirit energy from the spirit stones, Enchanting realized that she had reached a higher level, almost attaining the 5th heaven of the heavenly Venerate. It was Enchanting's first time experiencing such a remarkable difference after coming out from the illusory void. No wonder these miracle pills are so popular within the second domain. It is truly a precious treasure. A smile hinted at the edges of Enchanting's mouth, and she wiped away the perspiration on her body. After changing into a clean set of clothing, she disguised her appearance into the beautiful face she had yesterday, preparing to win big again. Bailey Shi and Mu Feiruo felt bad for receiving so much help from Enchanting, but they knew for a fact that they had no gift in gambling at all. All they could do was offer their Dharma treasures to repay her. Similar to the previous day, Enchanting and Jiang Shaobai waited until the sky turned dark and they came up to the ground level of the Crystal Palace. But there was someone earlier than them. The girl and man from yesterday had already arrived before them. After the man said a few words to the girl, he headed outside by himself to work hard to afford their stay at the Crystal Palace. When the girl saw them, she didn't seem too happy. She merely made a soft humph sound before turning around and running towards Fu Qiu, who was biting on his opium pipe. Enchanting and Jiang Shaobai didn't bother with that diva and they prepared to leave. Suddenly, they saw the girl taking a portrait out of the space ring and showing it to Fu Qiu. "Have you seen this person before?" Her voice was hopeful as she asked. Chapter 1871, Unexpected Discovery, 2. With a slight twist of its head, Fu Qiu glanced over, but when it saw the portrait, it was stunned. Enchanting and Jiang Shaobai also had a look when they walked past. Enchanting froze on the spot when she saw the portrait. It was a portrait of an ethereal beauty. The beauty had distinct facial features, with a gentle smile on her face. It only took one look for one to unknowingly be mesmerized by her smile. What surprised her most was that the beauty in the portrait wore a jade pendant around her neck. Subconsciously running her fingers over her chest, the jade pendant in the portrait was the exact one she wore. "Sister Qing, why does the lady in the portrait look so similar to you?" Jiang Shaobai was also shocked when he saw the portrait. The lady resembled Enchanting, with the biggest difference lying in the aura they exuded. But their facial features were almost identical. When the girl heard Jiang Shaobai's words, she turned around to look at Enchanting's current face. When she saw the unsightly birthmark on the latter's face, her own darkened. "What nonsense are you spouting? How does Aunt Jo even resemble this ugly freak? Go and see the doctor if you have bad eyesight." The girl lashed out at Jiang Shaobai. She could never tolerate any slandering of Aunt Jo. Jiang Shaobai merely shrugged. "They really do look alike." The girl was about to explode, but Fu Qiu was in a corner, still in a daze. Enchanting felt even more complicated. The jade pendant was left behind by her biological mother. Enchanting had actually seen the same jade pendant in the portrait from Jiang Lang. Now, the same jade pendant appeared in the portrait today. Jiang Lang and the others would always call Enchanting's mother Zhou Yuan, while this girl called her Aunt Jo. Could it be that Aunt Jo was her mother? The speculation was startling and Enchanting mulled over the information in her head. The reason for taking part in the martial arts championship was to look for clues regarding her mother in the mystic realm. She had never expected such a turn of events. She had long given up after learning that everything would change every single time she entered the Immortal Footsteps mystic realm. But now, somehow, she had the opportunity to learn more clues about her mother. Her eyes then riveted on the frozen Fu Qiu, who was filled with shock. She recalled Fu Qiu calling her Jiuer when it first saw her. Jiu Yuan, Aunt Jiu, Jiuer. Could it be that after the reset of the Immortal Footsteps mystic realm, she had entered the mystic realm that her mother had visited before? She felt complicated. Somehow, Yi Qingtang could no longer hear the girl and Jiang Shaobai's voices anymore. Everything pointed in one direction, and Yi Qingtang needed one more crucial clue to confirm her speculation. Averting her eyes from Fu Qiu, Yi Qingtang collected herself before dragging Jiang Shaobai out the door. That night, Yi Qingtang put her thoughts together as she won more spirit stones from the fat catfishes. Even Jiang Shaobai could tell that she wasn't focused, but he didn't delve deeper. Only when the sky gradually turned brighter did they head back to the Crystal Palace. As promised, Long Yi returned the 1,000 spirit stones to Yi Qingtang. Chapter 1872, Unexpected Discovery. 3. Yi Qingtang could sense that Long Yi and the girl had some understanding of this mystic realm, which was why they had an easier time around. Although she wanted to ask them about it, she didn't know how and where to start. If she made a wrong guess, it would become rather problematic instead. Even if her intuition was right. How could she possibly claim kinship with them just based on her appearance and a jade pendant? If she did, it would possibly make them categorize her as someone with ill intentions. Yi Qingtang returned to her room and thought it through before she decided that it was best for her to ask Fu Qiu about it. After calming her emotions, she cultivated for quite a while and the ground would not stop shaking. Despite that, Little White Tiger was still able to sleep through it. Yi Qingtang wanted to wake it up so that they could go check things out together, but no matter how hard she pushed against it, Little White Tiger didn't wake up. That was strange. Yi Qingtang couldn't help but feel puzzled. In the end, she walked out of the room by herself, wanting to head inside the Crystal Palace and ask Fu Qiu some questions. But when she came to the ground level of the Crystal Palace, sunlight glittered in from outside. It was almost dawn and the lights outside shone everywhere, adorning the Crystal Palace with a layer of gold lights. Endless howls could be heard from outside the Crystal Palace at a supposedly peaceful time. The ground wouldn't stop shaking, almost to the point where it might just collapse. Lifting her eyes, Yi Qingtang was able to see outside. The scene before her rendered her speechless. Large shapes bit each other ferociously, making loud, bestial roars. Fat, catfish. Yi Qingtang said with widened eyes. Outside the Crystal Palace, countless fat catfishes had gone mad, fighting each other. Their bodies weren't green but were white now, and their eyes were devoid of emotions, unlike their characters in the dark. Yi Qingtang couldn't believe the scene before her eyes. The fat catfishes had told them that it was very dangerous in the day, those who went out during the day never came back. But Yi Qingtang had never expected it to be like this. The monsters turned out to be the demonized fat catfishes. They would mingle around and have fun together at night, but during the day, they would lose all consciousness and become enemies. They opened their mouths wide, biting each other ferociously. Yi Qingtang could somehow see some gleaming spots when they bit each other. It dropped out from the wounds of the fat catfishes as they fought. Instead of blood, the fat catfishes didn't bleed when they were bitten. The limbs that were bitten off would turn into spirit stones. Spirit stones. Fat catfish. Yi Qingtang suddenly recalled Jiang Shaobai's question from yesterday. Where did the fat catfishes get their spirit stones from? It wasn't from underground, but from the fat catfishes' bodies. Why did you come out? Someone screamed from behind. When Yi Qingtang turned around, she saw a huge figure coming in her direction. The green color of Fu Qiu's had turned white instead. Its beady eyes had turned red, its big mouth had saliva dripping down like a rabid beast. It was terrifying. Chapter 1873, Demonic, 1, You've seen it. Fu Qiu tried to speak with difficulty, making weird sounds. Fu Qiu was completely different from its usual self at night. It now exuded a dangerous aura from head to toe. Thump, thump. Yi Qingtang's heart palpitated rapidly, darting back quickly to escape from them. She had no idea what had happened to these fat catfishes, but from what she saw, they seemed to be affected during the day. They loved gambling at night. When they had awareness, they weren't dangerous at all. But in the day, they seemed to have lost all reasoning and acted like baleful ghosts out for revenge. Yi Qingtang could finally understand why the fat catfishes were that afraid of the day. They themselves had no idea how they would become during the day. Fu Qiu's red eyes were fixated on Yi Qingtang, suddenly stretching its fat tongue out in Yi Qingtang's direction. Yi Qingtang leaped aside, dodging the disgusting tongue, and her gaze quickly landed on the underground pathway of the Crystal Palace. With full speed, Yi Qingtang rushed towards the underground pathway, but Fu Qiu was abnormally agile. Its solidified tongue also moved nimbly, wrapping around her slim waist when she tried to escape towards the underground pathway. Fu Qiu picked Yi Qingtang up with its tongue and slammed her against the wall in the Crystal Palace with a loud thud. She felt as though her body was going to fall apart. Although she couldn't determine how powerful the fat catfishes were, now that she had seen them in action, Fu Qiu's powers didn't seem to be any lower than the Paragon level. Fu Qiu's face had turned into a grimace, wrapping its tongue tightly around Yi Qingtang's waist as it slammed her around. It suddenly curled its tongue, bringing Yi Qingtang towards the insides of its mouth. Was it fucking going to swallow her? Yi Qingtang was panicking. Seeing the huge and bloody mouth, she was suddenly engulfed in dark flames, shooting black flames from her palms into Fu Qiu's mouth. Fu Qiu's gaping mouth was just like a black hole, instantly swallowing the black flames once she shot it inside. At that moment, Fu Qiu's mouth seemed to have doubled in size and half of Yi Qingtang's body was in its mouth. Fu Qiu's sharp teeth were about to bite down on Yi Qingtang's legs. Yi Qingtang's heart sank. Her attack seemed to have no effect on Fu Qiu at all. Fu Qiu was just like a solid wall, absorbing all her moves without being affected at all. The next moment, Yi Qingtang felt pain in her legs. Fu Qiu had already bitten down, and looking at Fu Qiu's demonic eyes, she suddenly had an idea. She knocked her head against Fu Qiu's head. Bang! When Yi Qingtang knocked her head against Fu Qiu's, the jade pendant she wore around her neck slid from the resulting movement and appeared before Fu Qiu's eyes. At that moment, Fu Qiu froze. It stopped all of its attacks, looking at the jade pendant with reddened eyes. Yi Qingtang was shocked to see Fu Qiu stop moving. Seeing that Fu Qiu was in a daze, she quickly grabbed the opportunity and hit Fu Qiu's head with all her might, escaping from its mouth with her heart pounding. Chapter 1874, Demonic, 2. Even though she had escaped, her leg was still imprinted with Fu Qiu's teeth marks. Outside the Crystal Palace, the light of dusk was slowly being engulfed by the darkness of night. But just as everything was about to turn dark, the fat catfishes slaughtering each other relentlessly outside seemed to be drawn to some force. As if possessed, they swept the spirit stones on their floor into their stomachs with their tongues and plunged back into the earth without another word. It was as though none of that had ever happened. All traces of their battle above ground quickly vanished as well. Yi Qingtang panted softly as she kept her eye on Fu Qiu. The red light in Fu Qiu's eyes slowly faded as his deathly white skin gradually returned to its normal green. Its entire body suddenly relaxed. Was it back to normal? Yi Qingtang observed Fu Qiu carefully. Fu Qiu's head dropped downwards and then suddenly lifted again. But this time, the ferocity on his face was gone, replaced by anger. Who said you could come up here? Fu Qiu's eyes were filled with clarity again, and it was staring at Enchanting with intense anger. Storming over to Enchanting, Fu Qiu grabbed her neck. Enchanting had never expected to find out the fat catfish's secret by mistake. She dodged subconsciously as Fu Qiu reached for her. Fu Qiu didn't manage to grab her neck but caught her jade pendant instead. Its anger subsided as it saw the familiar pendant. Where did you get this jade pendant? I'll throw you out if you don't tell me, Fu Qiu snapped with narrowed eyes. My mother gave it to me. Enchanting already had her suspicions but quickly replied to Fu Qiu's question now that it had asked her. Shock filled Fu Qiu's face as it lifted its eyes to look at Enchanting. Although Enchanting had changed her appearance, Fu Qiu had been shocked the first time it saw her. She looked just like. A long time ago, the girl with a smile as beautiful as the fresh flowers in spring, had shown herself in front of it with the same pendant. She had said before that the jade pendant was extremely important to her. Fu Qiu had wanted to touch it out of curiosity once but had been rejected by her. Back then, she had said that only her family could touch the pendant. A similar appearance and the same jade pendant. These clues flashed in Fu Qiu's mind. Jiuer is your mother. Fu Qiu looked at Enchanting. Jiuer, Enchanting was hearing this familiar name once again. Is the Jiu you're talking about called Jiu Yuan? Fu Qiu froze for a moment and thought for a while before nodding. The unease in Fu Qiu's heart subsided as Enchanting said Jiuer's name. Appearances could be altered and the jade pendant could be a fake, however, Fu Qiu felt something familiar from Enchanting. Even though Fu Qiu hadn't been able to confirm Enchanting's identity before this, some of her blood was left in its mouth after it had bit her just now. Fu Qiu and the other members of its clan were the only creatures that could sense the familiarity from someone's blood so accurately. You're Jiuer's daughter, where is your mother now? Fu Qiu asked agitatedly after confirming Enchanting's identity. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.